Hi, and welcome to this training on planning your weekly and monthly yoga practice. So I'm going to use this session to show you how you can plan your weekly yoga and how that can then help to plan the whole of your month. If we haven't met before, I'm Kate Rosette. I'm a certified Iyengar yoga teacher and I'm the founder of yogabranches.com. And I'm on a bit of a mission to just support people in any way that I can to make their home yoga practice consistent and regular and ongoing. And so I like to share what I do in my practice with you to help you get it going. So today we're going to be looking at creating a weekly plan for our practice and then feeding that into the whole monthly plan. So if you haven't already, download the file on this page and open it up so that you can follow along with me on creating a weekly plan for your practice. So here we have the weekly practice planner that you should have downloaded by now and open it up in Acrobat. And you'll see these blue squares. I've made this document editable so that you can actually write into these places here. So to start with, we're going to just create a rough weekly planner. Now, this doesn't have to be set for every single week the same. You can change it week by week, but start by setting a weekly planner so that each day you're going to know what time of the day you're going to practice, the location of your practice, the duration, and the focus. So just to give a little bit more detail, because you might think for yourself, okay, well, every time I'm just going to do it at 6 in the morning at home for 20 minutes, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll give you an example of my practice schedule, which is quite dynamic because I'm a teacher and I have other commitments. So, for example, on a Monday, I always do my lead practice at 6 a.m. and the location is online for my community. The duration is always 45 minutes and the focus is always an active practice rather than it being restorative or pranayama. That's usually the case. So this week it was active. On Tuesday, for example, it's always at 5:45 a.m. that I practice, and I practice at the yoga studio with the teachers. So it's a teachers-led practice. We practice for an hour and 15 minutes. And in terms of focus, it is usually active, but it's also lucky dip. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm going to follow the teacher who's leading that day, and so on. So again, on Wednesday, I practice at 6:30. It's a late start for me. It's my sleep-in morning because I teach late on a Tuesday night. I practice at home and just for 1 hour. And actually, that is my restorative and pranayama practice. So you can go through each day, putting in the time, the location, the duration, and the focus of the practice, whether or not it's going to be active, restorative, pranayama, a combination of both. You also here might want to include if you're going to write the sequence yourself, which in this case on the Monday I do, I write the sequence. Or perhaps if you're going to follow an audio or a visual or a PDF practice, which on perhaps Wednesday I might do. So going through each day and filling that out is the first step just to plan out how you're going to approach your week. So now that you've created a plan for how your weekly practice is going to look in terms of what time you're going to practice, for how long, and a theme for the practice, we want to stick with that for the whole month. And now having both of those documents next to each other, the weekly planner and the monthly planner, we're now going to complete the monthly plan, looking and referring back to that weekly plan. And I encourage you to stick with that weekly plan for a whole month. So it's going to be repetitive. And the point of that is that then it gets into a system and a cycle and it's easier to repeat and do ongoing. You can always change it after a month, but I do recommend sticking with it for an entire month. Let's jump into that second document there, the monthly planner, and follow along with me. Now with these two documents in front of us, the weekly planner, which we've already completed, and the monthly planner, which we're now going to complete. The first step is just to write in the dates so that it corresponds with the month that you're planning or wherever you're at. You can just start from today so that you're not waiting till the end of the month to get going. Just start from today and pop in the dates for every day of the month that you're creating your schedule for. That would be the first step. After that, we want to just create this list here, which I've popped in that bottom right-hand corner, of categories of poses, and you'll understand why I've included this shortly. So here we've got categories of poses, which include standing poses, sitting poses, inversions, back bends, arm balances, and restorative. Now, of course, there's other categories of poses as well, like twisting and forward bends, but here I just want to stick to the main 6 categories of poses that we're going to work with, because within them you can include your forward bends and your twists and so on. So we've got that. Now, before we go any further, to look at the month, there's one thing we would like to add in first, and that is if you're menstruating in this monthly cycle, to add in those menstruation days or ovulation days, because they're going to affect how you practice on those days. And also to include if you're traveling. I think those for myself are the 2 main things that come up every single month that have an effect on my practice. So to write in on those days if you're going to have your period, if you're going to be ovulating and that affects your practice, or if you're going to be traveling. So for example, I might just pop in here, ovulation, and then perhaps 2 weeks later, roughly, pop in menstruation, and then maybe I'm going to be traveling on this day and this day. Okay, so we've got that all set now. We're ready to refer back to our weekly plan and start to include what we're actually going to practice each day. So we know that on a Monday we're going to practice at 6 a.m. and it's going to be a 45-minute practice that is active. So what I like to do is basically cycle through these different categories of poses and spread them out across the whole month. So the month is getting a full range of practice and you're covering a full range of poses and your body is going through a full range of motions. So let's just start, for example, on that first Monday, which is an active practice, for it to be standing poses. And then we know on a Tuesday at 5:45, we're practicing for 1 hour and 15 minutes and it's active. It is at the studio, and I mentioned that for me is a teacher's practice and I actually don't need to come up with the sequence. But in this case, if it wasn't, if I had to come up with the sequence, then perhaps I would want that to be a sitting sequence. Okay, then you would go on for each day to add that in. So we know that on Wednesday, it's a 1 hour pranayama practice. So I'm going to specify what pranayama, and perhaps that day I will do Viloma 1 to 8. Oops. And then so on. On Thursday, it's going to be the 2 hour practice and assessment preparation. So for that one, I'm going to practice the first half of the assessment sequence, and then so on. So you'll do this for each day of the week and continue, just so that it's clear that next active one, we would just cycle through and put then their inversions. And then the next active practice, the next one on the list is back bends. I did have travel written there, so that would be another consideration when I'm creating that sequence. So it doesn't mean that the whole sequence is going to be just back bends, but to make the theme or the focus of that sequence back bends, so that you know at some point in the sequence you want to do some back bends. So to get to those back bends, you have to add a couple of poses to prepare for the back bends, some poses of back bends, and then some counter poses afterwards. So that just helps you give a theme and a focus for your sequence for that day. Now you've got a total plan for how your month is going to look. The next thing to do is to sit down before the practice session and write out the sequence, or know that you're going to find an audio or a video or a picture sequence that you can follow along that has a focus that you have allocated for that day. So taking that time to prepare your sequence, to write it out on a bit of paper and have it ready before you get on the mat will help you be much more focused and efficient with your time on the mat. But the hard work is done. It's all there. You know what you're going to do. Some days you can wing it, just jump on the mat. You know you're doing inversions and that's what you practice. But I also recommend taking it that next step now and actually creating your sequences for every single day of the month. Good luck.